Cavs Insider Podcast, giving you all the latest news and information around the Cleveland Cavaliers with the preseason starting tomorrow. Can't believe it. Finally, preseason game one right around the corner. Of course, last night we found out Evan Mobley is going to be out for a week or two. What's the latest with his injured ankle? And what we learned today from practice when Coach Bickerstaff and Donovan Mitchell both spoke to the media. All coming up next, Cavs Insider Podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on the Cavs Insider Podcast. We're part of the Sports Illustrated Media Group on FanNation, CavsInsider.com, the website, our social media handles at CavsInsider_FN for FanNation. I'm Brendan Gulick. Today, John Rudder and Adam Prescott both jump on the Cavs Insider Daily Pod. Glad to have you guys, and want to give folks an idea of what we learned at practice today as we get ready for tomorrow's preseason game with obviously a whole lot of hype and anticipation with this team finally getting ready to jump on the floor. So let you guys jump in first. John, I know you're at practice today. Your thoughts on what you heard at practice?
Well, the big takeaway is everybody wants to know how Evan Mobley's doing, right? With that announcement yesterday announcing 1 to 2 weeks that he's going to miss with a right ankle sprain. A little bit of good news today. It doesn't seem like it's a terribly serious injury. JB Bickerstaff said that he doesn't anticipate Mobley being out for the regular season opener, but he probably will miss him most of the time here in the preseason. And you know what? If that's the case, you kind of want to proceed with caution. And that's exactly what they said that they were going to do. They said that they would evaluate him day to day to see how he's doing in that recovery process. But look, I'm all for the school of thought of like, let's put this guy in bubble wrap and get him to the regular season, because we are going to certainly need him to be in full form when this team tips off here north of the border in Toronto. Very similar injury, it sounded like, from last year. He missed about 5 games in March with a sprained left ankle. During that Magic game at the end of March, he jumped and landed on Franz Wagner's foot, twisted his ankle there. Kind of a similar situation in practice on Saturday. Jumped, landed on somebody's foot, and twisted it up there. So out for the next 1 to 2 weeks. It doesn't seem like it's going to be serious, so we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief here.
Yeah, and I think we really needed that, didn't we, Adam? I mean, the idea that, you know, this team is going to potentially start the season down one of its most important parts. I mean, that really would have sucked.
Yeah, someone asked me yesterday, what am I looking for? What am I maybe most hoping to see in the preseason? I said, I'm hoping to see everybody stay healthy first and foremost, because the best ability is availability. I saw a poll earlier today, a great poll, anonymous GMs. I think Evan Mobley was the leading vote getter, 21% of the votes on who general managers around the league think is most likely to have a breakout season. So, you know, as John said, put him in bubble wrap. There's nothing worth, risking here. Preseason is good for a lot of things, but it can also come back to haunt you if you don't manage certain aspects the right way. So the ceiling and the potential of Evan Mobley, you don't want to let something small become big.
It's funny. I asked JB on Monday when we were at the facility before this news came out. You know, you get coached basically every day of the week. And so you try to ask some different things because you don't want to get the exact same answers. And he's pretty thoughtful with what he says, but he's just trying for some different content. So I specifically asked him on Monday afternoon, hey, can you describe the unique challenges that the athletic training staff has this time of year as you try to get guys 100%? Having no idea that Evan Mobley got hurt on Saturday and that they were probably like, you got to be kidding me. So it's funny to go back and reflect on his answer, talking about how tough a job those guys have, or I should say those guys and ladies have, to make this thing work and to get everybody as healthy as possible so that when game one hits, you are off and running. So the good news is, I guess this is not going to be, or at least it's not supposed to be a long-term injury. I'm going to be honest, I'm holding my breath a little bit because
worried over you 7-footers. Yeah.
And it's like the whole like foot ankle thing, especially with big guys. I know he's mobile, but man, that just feels like something that might not go away right away. Maybe I'm just speculating, but that was immediately where my head went was, oh God, this could linger for a bit.
Well, I posed that question too today, and like just kind of, he's a 7 footer, as you mentioned. He's long, he's lanky. Like, is he just maybe like inherently susceptible to like some of these sprains just because of his length, of his size? And I wondered that to myself today. So it's interesting that you brought that up too.
It's a very reactionary culture right now in a lot of ways, even outside of sports. But you're seeing it in the NFL. This has nothing to do with basketball, but in the NFL with Tua Tagovailoa right now and the concussion stuff. And I think a couple days after that, was like 15 guys on Sunday, on NFL Sunday, kept out for precautionary reasons for head injuries. And same thing in basketball. These mobile 7-footers that could be a little fragile or a little more susceptible to getting banged up. And you've seen it happen with other places. So I'm sure those athletic trainers, like you mentioned in Cleveland, are going to be paying attention to this one extra closely.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and I think maybe some of it resonates so deeply with Cavs fans right now simply because of the way last year went. I mean, there was a pretty good feeling halfway through the season that this team was on its way toward potentially a top 3 seed in the East, and then all of a sudden it just felt like the bottom was pulled out from it, and they didn't finish well and ended up having to play in a play-in game. I think there's so much optimism and hope going into this year, especially with the addition of Donovan Mitchell, to start the season with, something as simple as a sprained ankle for one of your bigger players. It's frustrating. It's not the end of the world. Again, I'm not trying to be reckless and say like, Mobley's going to miss a bunch of time. That's like that one injury that I'm just kind of like, hold my breath a little bit.
Always makes you cringe.
We hope it goes as well as they expect it to go,
Yeah.
You guys might kind of get a kick out of this too, because they did ask how Mobley was. We didn't obviously see him today, but they said, "Hey, how's Evan doing?" And he said, he said, Evan Mobley's being Evan Mobley. Like, he's really not taking it. He's like, JB gave the roller coaster. He was like, he doesn't ride the roller coaster. He's just kind of like,
so he hasn't even spoken. Okay, good.
Right. I don't see Evan Mobley even ride roller coasters. I feel like he's not like he's too tall. Like I'm sure he goes to a theme park. They're probably not even letting him on a roller coaster anyways.
You could almost even use that, like anytime that you see that Nick Chubb said this and it's just a empty quotation marks. That is almost how I feel about Evan Mobley.
There you go. Perfect.
When he's responding to something.
I love it. Let's project a little bit what it's going to look like tomorrow night then without him. The idea that you use the preseason anyways for this kind of stuff, but especially now that he's not going to be on the floor. And I would imagine they're not going to run, their starters into the ground. I'm curious to see what kinds of lineups they put on the floor. Do they try to put Jared Allen and Robin Lopez on the floor together? Does Kevin Love play more? But you don't really need to see anything from him. You know what you have in Kevin Love. It's like, for me, it's about keeping him healthy for the start of the season. Do you move Windler or Wade to the 4 spot as you try to figure out what that small forward position is? Because that's what all the talk's been about. I'm interested to see how they actually run out there.
Yeah, JB said today, of course, wouldn't commit to any starting 5 or give any inclination as to who might play. He did say Jarrett and Darius and Donovan are all going to play together or play together at some point. But as for how long, that remains to be seen. So I would imagine just a few minutes. But all the focus, I think, is still going to be on that 3 position, and they're just going to be throwing guys into that lineup to see what looks good and to see who looks comfortable in that role. He described it today as like, we're just going to throw stuff at the wall that Wednesday night and see what sticks. So I would expect to see some wild combinations out there.
You guys can agree or disagree with me here. I feel like that small forward needs to be Isaac Okoro, or they want it to be Isaac Okoro. I could be wrong here, but it just feels like with where they selected him and he's in year 3 now and a lot of things coming up for him contractually and stuff like that. Chetty Osman is great. Maybe we know what his ceiling is yet. We don't know what the ceiling is for Okoro yet. Dean Wade got a great contract extension. That's great, but I don't think he's going to be in the starting lineup if I had to guess. Karis LeVert feels like the most 6-man-ish to me. A guy that can carry a second unit and can come in and be aggressive and be the alpha male and go get you 18 a night, with that second unit. It feels like it needs to be a Okoro for this team to do what it wants to do. I could be wrong on that, but I'm interested to see it play out too.
No, I think that there's a lot of reason to think that might be the right decision. I mean, JB is so defensive minded. How much offense do you need from that spot when you've got guys like Darius and Donovan and you can play in the low paint the way you can. Maybe they want somebody that's a little more defensive. But when JB was asked about that, hey, how are you balancing what you want out of that role? Are you looking for more offense? Are you looking for more defense? I mean, he said last week, he's like, I'm not trying to punt on that question. It's going to sound like it. We want both, and we think that a lot of guys offer both. So maybe they're seeing more of the offensive development from Okoro, or maybe they are that much happier with the way LeVert looks defensively because he's finally healthy.
Yeah, I think that you may not need that third person to score, but they're going to have to score. If Garland and Mitchell are facing double teams and that 3-man is sitting there wide open with an uncontested shot, Okoro struggled to score at times last year, especially from the perimeter. And that whoever's in that role is going to get open shots just by nature of how the ball is going to move and who's going to command attention from the defense. So you may not ideally need it to score, but they're going to have to.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that point up because I was actually going back and forth with this in my mind just the other night because at first blush, I was kind of thinking more or leaning more along the lines of, okay, that'll probably be a Karis LeVert in that type of position. But he also kind of strikes me as a guy that maybe necessitates having the ball in his hands a lot. When you're out there with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, there aren't going to be quite as many touches to go around. So, of course, that lends it back to looking in Isaac Okoro's way. This organization's placed a lot of, they've got a lot of invested in him. He was a high pick. They liked him because of his defense coming out of Auburn. They've seen and they've liked some flashes that he's shown on the offensive end, specifically in transition. I think what they're trying to do is coax that out of him to all the time, right? And you hit the nail on the head with his perimeter shooting. That's something that he's worked on in the offseason. That was something that he wanted to work on specifically heading into his sophomore season, but we need to see more of it. They're just trying to look for ways to pull that out of him right now.
Yeah.
Cavs Insider Podcast available wherever you like to find your favorite podcast. And we certainly appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can bring you this kind of content on a daily basis. Brendan Gulick, John Rudder, Adam Prescott with you if you're listening after the fact. Thanks for that. Adam, before we talk about Donovan Mitchell today, maybe now, especially as Mobley's a little dinged up and with the trade rumors for Jay Crowder, you wrote about this the other day. I'm just curious your thoughts around, how realistic maybe that could be. Does it become more realistic if Evan Mobley or if somebody else starts dealing with something, whether or not it becomes public? And do you think Crowder might be the right kind of fit?
I'm not sure. I could be convinced either way. I'm not sure if Mobley's down. I don't know if Crowder specifically helps that. I think you probably turn to a couple other guys that are already on a roster instead. I don't think Crowder gives you even close to what Mobley gives you.
Sure.
Even at the same areas of the court or whatnot. I think the Cavs have some pieces that they could probably give up to get Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder's wouldn't be a bad acquisition. The guy has played in 107 playoff games and he always finds himself in a postseason for a reason. There's a reason that teams that are making a run in May and June want him on their roster. I don't think he's a necessity quite yet. Would it be a negative? No, but I don't think they need to go overspending or overreaching for a Jay Crowder at this point. Good player, but he's 33 years old. I think he could give you some good things, but I don't need you to go selling a farm to go get him.
Where I hesitate on Jay Crowder too is I wonder about his mobility because this is a team that wants to push the pace and wants to run the floor. We saw how well they did things, and they did that with before Ricky Rubio went down to injury. And I just wonder how Jay Crowder fits into that. He strikes me more of that was one of the reasons why a guy like an Andre Drummond didn't necessarily fit the fold with this team because he was more of a slow it down, gum it up in the paint guy, and obviously, Jay isn't exactly the size of Drummond, but he kind of strikes me in a little bit similar of a mold.
Well, that's why he fit in so well around Chris Paul. I mean, people think, the point guard, he's getting out, he's looking all fancy, but he actually is very deliberate, and he's got Phoenix very half-court centric, very deliberate, very thorough. That's why Crowder fits so well alongside them.
Yeah, John, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. I'm a little hesitant to think that he's going to be the kind of fit you want defensively on this team, maybe in short spurts, but I think the question really becomes, what do you give up for him? And, there are rumors I have read. I haven't really substantiated any of them, but there are those who wonder how much of a team first guy Jay Crowder is. I would think the Cavs right now are so protective of their culture that unless they are so sure about anybody, Crowder or otherwise, you're not adding or subtracting to what they have unless you think it is a slam dunk, no-brainer, because they really feel good about what they've got going. And again, it sounds like this Mobley injury is not going to be that big of a deal, not be long-term. So I really don't think they want to upset the apple cart, but it's at least worth asking.
Well, in that same poll I was reading earlier today with, the anonymous GMs, whatever, they talk about, Cavs had the best offseason or whatever. They've already made so many great moves. You don't have to go force another one.
Right. Let's wrap on it.
Tomorrow night, I'm looking to see what they're like on the bench and interacting on the court and just small things, random things, who's dapping guys up when they're coming off the court and what the energy's like in the huddle.
I expect it to be quite entertaining, and I expect
during timeout, some of that stuff, like, as Brennan alluded to, the culture, whatever, like, you just kind of want to see that growing, behind the scenes and not on the hardwood.
Yeah.
Well, they were very deliberate in expressing that when they did talk about the Mitchell acquisition as well, like very deliberate and concerted, like that. Hey, like Donovan Mitchell was a good player, but he's also a good person. And that is exactly why we wanted him to fit here.
Let's wrap on a Donovan Mitchell note. John, I know he spoke a little bit of practice today, and like some of the rest of us who travel constantly, he probably wakes up in certain cities some mornings and go, wait, where am I?
Yeah, and I think that the adjustment period still may be taking some time to soak in on him. I posted a great clip to my Twitter page that we retweeted on the Cavs Insider FN Twitter account. He's like, it still hasn't sunk in yet. And I don't think that it's going to sink in until he plays a home game. I mean, this was a guy talking about in his introductory press conference. He was like, I was the one running around my house in the Cavs jersey, yelling Cleveland Cavaliers like Ahmad Crump. So I think until he hears Ahmad, it's not going to really sink in. He said, I'll wake up sometimes and think like, oh, bleep, like, where am I right now? I'm in Cleveland. Like, it'll finally start to sink in once they hit the road and get on the floor in Philadelphia. But I think that you'll see a different Donovan Mitchell once they get things going at home.
I don't want to speak this into existence quite yet because we're still coming off summer, but I'm sure Cleveland's going to offer him a good amount of snow, just like Utah did.
He said he likes the winter clothes, so
I'm sure he'll feel right in there when the season starts flipping.
Oh man, it'll be great to have him, man. It's going to be fun to watch him go to work because he's one of the more special scorers in the league, and obviously he brings some incredible high-level play and credibility to what this offense is going to try to do. For as good as they were defensively last year, it's a move that obviously elevates the capability of the Cavs offense. And, I don't know if I'm ready to go out there the way Kendrick Perkins has in the offseason on ESPN saying that the Cavs have the best starting five in the league. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to make that kind of a jump, but they are in the conversation for having one of maybe the 5 or 6 best starting rotations in the league. Part of that, I want to actually see how they settle on who the small forward's going to be. And is that the same person every game, or do they rotate that based on which opponent they're playing? A lot to figure out still. All right. Well, I think we hit everything. You guys have anything else you want to hit?
I think that pretty much wrapped up everything from practice today. Team should be on a flight right now. It's about 3:40. If you're listening to this, I believe they were supposed to leave at 3:00 to head towards Philly. So
be awesome.
Ready to roll.
Watching them. It's going to be fun tomorrow night. Cavs and 76ers. Finally, some new blood on the floor as Cleveland and Philadelphia get after it. We'll have plenty of coverage for you on CavsInsider.com. We will certainly have some coverage for you on our podcast and our YouTube channel as well. Please check those out. And thanks for the subscription on YouTube. That certainly helps support the show as we try to grow this channel and give you the best opportunity we can to cover this team. Cavs Insider _FN. That's our Twitter and Instagram handles as well. John will give you a little behind the look action at some stuff from practice today as well. All right, for Adam Prescott and John Rudder, I'm Brendan Gulick. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, and we'll talk to you tomorrow as we get ready for Cavs preseason game number 1 here on Cavs Insider.